Welcome to the webinar, everyone. We are so glad to have you with us today. We are talking to specifically California landlords and property managers today about the California balcony law, which was passed not too long ago, SB721 and SB326. We have with us experts from EEEadvisor or 3EEadvisor, and their information is here on the screen. But before we get started, I just want to say a couple of things. First off, my name is Alexandra Alvarado, the Director of Marketing and Education here at the American Apartment Owners Association. We will be sending everyone here today a recording tomorrow by email. We'll also send you all of the PowerPoint slides and, of course, our speakers' contact information so you can connect with them if you have any questions. The presentation will go on for about 45 to 50 minutes or so, then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So save your questions and please put them in the question box, not the chat, so that we can keep good track of your questions and make sure that we get them all answered. And if we don't answer your question on this call, Omid and Ramtin, our speakers today, will be glad to help you offline in that case. So I want to tell you a little bit about our speakers today. We're going to start with Ramtin. So Ramtin has 15 years of experience as an engineer and has worked on over 1,000 unique projects, which is incredible. I mean, he's designed entire building structures, 200 to 400 units, and individual building components. In fact, they're the building components that we're going to be talking about today. So this is someone who's very familiar with the balcony components that the law has had to, require our landlords to get inspected. And he's also worked on numerous repair and rehab projects throughout the US. And this is actually really interesting. He's experienced as a forensic engineer and an expert witness in formal and informal hearings. So he's really been on both sides where these pieces of legislation, building codes are contested, and he helps to provide, his expert opinion. So he is actually a perfect person to talk about this today. And we also have with us Omid. Omid is the founder of 3EEadvisor, and that is a specialized engineering structural inspection firm that are active in Southern California, although, the information today will apply to everyone in California. But basically, Omid and his team help owners and HOAs comply with the balcony inspection requirements. They've set up this company just for that, so they can help support you. That's, their bread and butter. So we're really excited to have both of you with us, Omid and Ramtin. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to pass it along to you, Omid, to get started.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Omid. Glad to be here today. So we want to talk about California balcony law, SB721 and SB326. People know it as a balcony law. Let's just start it with history. So in 2015, 13 students fell down 40 feet to the ground, but because of balcony collapse, unfortunately, 6 of them passed away. And immediately investigation started to realize what was the reason of this collapse. So the evidence point out to dry rot. It happened exactly when the building was 9 years old and the construction was done in 2006. So California governor started working on a law as the SB721 in 2018. And a year after that, another law, SB326 for condominium in 2019. Let's talk about these two ordinances and realize what's the difference between these two, and quickly review to see which type of ordinances your building gonna fall off under it. So probably you're gonna hear more often EEE during this presentation, but let's understand what does it mean. It means exterior elevated elements, or we call it EEE here. It's very critical, as an owner, because you want to comply correctly by law. So let's understand the definition. It means that balcony, decks, walkway, stairway, any element that extend beyond exterior wall of your building is subject to these ordinances, as long as it's more than 6 feet, it's designed for human use, and it's or built on wood or wood-based product. So if you have any elements that less than 6 feet, you don't need to take any action. Let's compare these two ordinances. If your building is multifamily or apartment, you fall off, your building subject to SB721. And if your building is condominium or HOA, you are under SB326. If your building has more than 3 dwelling units, you are either subject to 721 or 326. But if your building has less than 3 dwelling units, you are fine, you are exempted. You don't need to take any action. The deadline for both of them are end of 2024. And let's talk about sampling size. You will hear we're going to talk about it more during this presentation. So for SB721, the inspector need to check and inspect 15% of each type of element. And for 326, engineer need to have 95% confidence to write a report and stamp it for you with 5% margin of error. Under SB721, you need to do inspection every 6 years. And for 326, you have to hire an inspector every 9 years. So this is a very important point. Under SB721, same company who perform inspection cannot do repair for you. This is literally the law. We are going to talk about it in the next slide, but just a heads up. But under 326, since this is the improved version, it's written in this way that one company can be the inspector and contractor at the same time. So it shouldn't be any problem. Let's talk about definition of inspector in SB721 and SB326. Inspector can be either structural or architect engineer, general contractor with B1 license, and certified home inspector. Under SB326, it should be either a structural or architect engineer. So as I said, I just brought for you a screenshot of the law SB721 that I highlighted here. It's literally said that no recommended repair should be performed by a licensed contractor serving as the inspector. So as you can see, if you want to comply correctly by law, you cannot hire them. So please pay attention to this point and make sure you are going to comply correctly. All right, what's the purpose of this inspection? What we are looking for? So if you hire an inspector and they come to your building to create a report for you, it's critical that you understand the components in the report need to be evaluated. The inspector need to make sure they are working correctly. They're going to evaluate future performance and useful life of expectancy. And they're going to declare and clarify over there that they are free from decay, hazard, rot, and rust. Let's talk about time frame. As we mentioned before, for SB721, as an owner, you need to have inspection by end of 2024, and you need to have subsequent inspection every 6 years thereafter. If I'm sorry, if your building newly constructed and you submitted your permit application after 2019, you need to have this inspection 6 years after that. And as an owner, it's critical you understand that you need to keep this record for 2 inspection cycles. It means that 12 years. If you decide to sell your property, you need to give it to the new owner. But under SB326, you need to have inspection every 9 years. And for new condo association, if a building permit application submitted after January 1st, 2020, inspection should be done no later than 6 years following the issuance of certificate of occupancy. Also, as we mentioned for SB721, this is the same rule here. You need to keep your report for 2 inspection cycle, which means that 18 years. What exactly needs including in your inspection report? So first of all, your inspection report need to be written by engineer or inspector. It has to be stamped and signed by them. It required to identify all EEE. Also, inspector need to bring all photos and picture that he took it from your building in the report. And also it should clarify any recommendation if your building require any type of repair, which we are going to talk about it in the next couple of slides. And also, last not least, it should include and explain about current physical condition and future performance expectancy for any exterior elevated elements. Let's talk about the repair. So if an engineer determine your building require repair, there are 2 scenarios that happen here. Either it's going to be urgent repair as an immediate hazard or threat for safety of your occupant or tenant, or it can be simple repair. If it fall under urgent repair, the inspector need to notify owner within 15 days of completion of inspection. And as an owner, you need to immediately make sure that your tenant or your occupant don't have access to this EEE. And if recommended by inspector, you need to install temporary shoring to protect it, at least temporarily protected until the repair has been completed. But if it fall under simple repair, inspector need to deliver report within 45 days to you, and you will have 240 days literally. You have 120 days to apply for permit, and you have 120 days to start working on construction after you obtain permit from your local city. If you are not going to do repair and you not finish construction repair, then after 180 days from permit approval, inspector required to notify local city for to make sure that this building will be safe at the end. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's talk about permit application. What do you need if you want to obtain a permit from your local city? An engineer, structural engineer or architect engineer need to design and start working on drawing and put it as a submittal package for your local city and submit it there. And once the permit change it to RTI, which means that ready to issue or approval, you can hire a contractor to start working on construction and repair. Once you hire them, you are good to go. You can go for the next step. But this is a point that I want to talk about it. Why do you need to perform repairs? For a couple simple reasons. First of all, for liability risk. If someone being injured in your building, you're going to be liable. So it's very important you make sure to be protected, yourself and your tenant. Secondly, the penalty you're going to probably get from the city, which is between 100 to 500 per day from your local city. And last not least, is that your building may be tagged as a red flag building in the safety division of your local city. That was pretty much about this law. Ramtin is going to resume this presentation. Ramtin? You're mute.
Thank you, Omid. Pardon me. Omid, you have my presentation on the screen, I presume, right?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for your time. I wanted to discuss a little bit further what we call triple E's are. Exterior elevated elements. I will fumble over the words if I keep saying those three words, so I'm just going to refer to them as triple E's. A good place to start is just putting the definitions that you see actually in the bills, in the Senate bills right on the screen. And SB721 does a pretty good job, a detailed job of explaining what it is. And if I have to read directly from the screen, exterior elevated elements means the following type of structures, including their supports and railings: balconies, decks, porches, stairways, walkways, entry structures that extend beyond the exterior walls of the building and which have a walking surface that is elevated more than 6 feet, vertically elevated more than 6 feet above the ground level, and are designed for human occupancy or use, and rely in whole or substantial part on wood or wood-based products for structural support. So Omid went through that, but I want to make sure you get to see the actual language used. Now, in a more graphical presentation of this, let's take a look at this image we have on the screen together. This is a cross-section of a typical multifamily building, perhaps. The light blue lines indicating the extent of those exterior wall elements. Whatever you see in the dark red color is what is considered a triple E, an exterior elevated element. Now, on the right side of the photo, the image, we have exterior stairs, we have exterior decks, we have exit balconies. On the right side, on the left side, we have cantilevered decks, guard and balconies. And what you should notice is there's 2 areas of roof deck, but they're not considered beyond the cantilevered deck, the upper and the lower roof deck. They're not considered exterior elevated elements. Why? Because they do not extend beyond the exterior walls of the building. So that's a caveat that you should be fully aware of. And again, if you look at towards the bottom of the photo, there is a few stairs going up to a stair landing. And if that dimension is less than 72 inches or 6 feet from the grade level, they're again not considered an exterior elevated element, and they do not fall under these 2 ordinances that we were speaking about. But we have landlords and building managers here, so let's look at an actual building. And this is a building. This is a Google Street photo, just to make it a very typical building that's out there, and it has certain amount of these triple E's. I want to kind of, this is not the most fun topic perhaps to talk about, so let's make it a little bit more interactive, and I think Alexander is going to help us out with some poll questions. I want to identify some triple E elements and then ask you whether you think they fall under the ordinance or not. Let's start with these cantilevered balconies.
Great. Yes, I put up the question on the screen. So just a quick answer here. I'm just going to leave it up for, I don't know, about 20 seconds or so. So let's see if it's a yes or a no. And the results are, people have said yes.
Yes. So the answers, obviously, let me close this, pardon me. The answer is yes for the cantilevered balconies. We also have some supported balconies. Now, if you can tell, those balconies have walls on 3 sides, so they're not necessarily cantilevering out. Their structural system might be different than a pure cantilever. What do you think about those?
All right, there are the results. A little mix this time.
A little more mixed, and this is the exact point of this slide. So let me close that up again. There's always too many buttons to press. So this is an absolute yes also. And I will tell you why. But let's take a look at, Juliet balconies. Now this building has, in this area, there's 6 of them. What do you think about those?
I think even I forgot the answer to this one. And I saw the slide earlier. Let's see. It's pretty split on it. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna share the results.
It is absolutely split. So again, closing that up, and with this one, it's a no. So let's expand on why this is a no. This is our first no. Well, if we go back to the language that I had put on the screen and I had bolded some areas for emphasis, these Juliet balconies are not intended for human occupancy or use. They're mostly an architectural element, for a lack of a better word, slab next to the facade of the building. So they do not serve that occupancy need, and thus they do not fall under these two ordinances. But the cantilevered balconies, certainly, you can see there's doors to access them. They're meant for that. They have the walking surface meant for human use and human occupancy. The supported balconies on the right-hand side, same thing. They definitely do fall under that ordinance. And again, we're talking about a building that has multiple units beyond the number where the ordinance is triggered. So there's one more element on here. There's a roof overhang towards the top of the photo. What do you think about that? So we have a lot of no's and 24% yes. And I think that's the best answered one as far as the trick question part of it. Good work. It is, in my opinion, a no. Now, obviously, any good law will have gray areas. So, but the most important part, again, is, was it intended for human occupancy or use? Certainly, there can be access up there for maintenance. That looks like a tile roof at the top, but it's intended use is not for human occupancy. So I do not find that roof overhang to fall under the requirements of these two ordinances. And I hope this kind of painted an image of what might be included and what might not be included. Let's talk about, balconies are a big part of this. Obviously, there's other elements we talked about, but let's talk about the balconies, for example. There is several types of balconies out there that we're all probably familiar with. Balconies could be supported from below. In this example, on the left side, there is brackets, steel or metal brackets that are supporting the balcony. And in the middle, these are hung balconies. In this case, there's a steel tension rod that goes back to the stud wall above, and it's supported at the end in that manner. So it's supported at 2 points, at the rim board of the building and at the far end of the balcony. And then there is just typical, supported balconies. They could be supported on a post and beam structure below, or they could be supported on walls, like the picture that we had, the middle portion of the building we were looking at previously. So the question becomes, for example, on the left side, this is a wood balcony supported on steel elements, and the ordinances specify wood or wood supported. Do we feel that this falls under the ordinance or not? And my interpretation is that it absolutely does. The balcony itself, the railings itself, are made out of wood in this case, and its supported element is made out of steel. Now, if it was in reverse, meaning, let's say you had a metal joist balcony with some metal stairs, but the supported structure of that balcony below, aka the bracket, was made out of wood, I would also argue that that falls under this ordinance, because again, that supported element now is made out of wood. Similar logic applies to the picture in the middle. Again, these are some of those gray areas that owners and property managers might have. So, I wanted to kind of focus on those a bit. The other types of structures that are, pardon me, that fall under this, again, entry structures, stairs, walkways, all these elements do fall under that. And there's a ton of buildings out there that have these. So kind of going through your head and then kind of compare and contrast what your building does have and doesn't have, and you'll get a good sense of whether you need to kind of be aware and active about these ordinances or not. I want to take a step back. I want to Omid touched upon this as well, and I'm going to repeat some stuff on purpose because I want to provide some emphasis. What is the purpose of this inspection? So again, the items that I have on the screen for you are taken directly from the language of the bill. They're to determine if the EEEs and the associated waterproofing components, which I will also define for you, are in adequate working order, generally safe condition, and free from any hazardous conditions. Now, those can be decay, fungus, or simple deteriorations because somebody worked on them and did some improper alterations or improper, maintenance, perhaps. But what are those waterproofing elements? Well, they're really any element that protects that structural components within those EEEs from exposure to moisture, water, the outside elements, membranes, coatings, sealants, flashings, so on and so forth. So they also need to be taken a look at. It's not just purely a structural review, because in essence, the entirety of these EEE elements have to be considered safe. And if we can't keep the elements, that deteriorate these structures, pardon me, let me rephrase that. We have to consider in essence, what actually protects these structural elements in our inspections. Now, there's a slew of firms out there that provide these services for you, and they all have their own processes and methods of doing this. What I wanted to do again for the landlords and the property managers that we have on today is kind of paint a picture of a typical inspection process. So this is not perhaps exactly what you will encounter, but this is a good generic kind of feel for what you might expect. First and foremost, obviously, you'll do your research, you'll call a company, and that company visits the project sites to document all those EEEs. And that appear to be subject to the requirements of 721 and SB326. Again, that means going and looking at the building and the image that I had with all the bubbles and seeing what you have and what you don't have and how many of each. I'm associated with EEE. Omid had asked me to join this presentation. My understanding is EEEadvisors does this portion of the work free of charge. Then there will be a determinants of the baseline number of EEEs that needs to be inspected for compliance. Omid touched upon this, and we can certainly expand on it after the presentation too. Each bill has a different way of looking at the minimum number that needs to be looked at. SB721 requires 15% of each type of element, where the SB326 says they need to achieve 95% confidence plus or minus 5%. Now, again, I can help you out and make you understand what that actually means, but let me talk about some numbers, for example. Let's say you have an apartment building that has 3 or 4 units. Under SB721, to achieve that 15%, one of those elements needs to be looked at. Under SB326, which is for HOAs, all 4 of them or 3 of them, 100% of the cases need to be looked at. As the number of units go up, they never really converge unless you have a very, very high number. SB326 always will require you to look at a lot more, but that number will go down when you have large number of units. So let's look at a case where you have, for example, 20 units. For 20 units, you need about 3 of the EEEs looked at under 721 for multifamily properties. And for condos, if you have, that number, you have to look at 19 of the 20. That's still significant. Really, when you get to about 1,000 units, you can get away with, inspecting maybe about 27, 28% of them. So really, it's a scale thing with regards to the SB 326 bill. The 721 is a bit more streamlined as far as the number of elements that have to be looked at. Elements, again, meaning triple E's. So now let's talk about, so we determine a baseline number to look at, and then obviously there is, I'm sure, a proposal process, and there's some back and forth, and you get an approved proposal. After that, what happens is the inspection starts. So there's two real cases that we can be faced with. One is if the triple E elements are open deck. By that I mean it's not covered. You can look underneath it. You can see the joists. You can see the underside of the deck. You have actual visual access for a visual inspection. We can see it with our eyes. Well, in that case, you provide the visual inspection. You can see what's going on. You can take a look at the structural supporting members, the guardrails, their attachments, the surface elements. There might be some probing of the members to look at, what's happening within the actual cross sections of these elements. And a moisture meter might be used to take some moisture measurements. But most often, and we're talking about California in this case, these triple E elements are covered, and oftentimes covered in stucco. So what happens there? Well, the ordinances, they speak about visual inspection. So right away, it kind of forces you into having to look beyond the covering, right? But what I do, and this is not just unique to California, it's in any case, is you always provide a visual inspection of the exterior surfaces anyway, in my opinion, and the nearby building surfaces. There's a lot of foreshadowing that can happen by doing that. And you might not get any of the story, but you might get part of the story of what's happening behind it. But it's always a good idea to do that. In fact, for that initial site visit, when you're determining perhaps which triple E elements to inspect, it's those types of visual evidence that'll point you to focusing on one versus not focusing on one. If you have a few balconies or triple E elements, and one is showing some signs that there is something going on there, well, you bet that that's the one that's going to be inspected and opened up. That is the right thing to do, in my opinion. So let's go through what actually happens when we encounter these covered triple E's. Now, some firms drill a series of small holes, perhaps 1 inch in diameter. Some of the other firms out there provide larger diameter holes, and using borescope cameras or other types of technologies where we can send, in essence, a camera in, they'll perform their visual inspection through that. So what about infrared cameras? Can those be used to not have to penetrate and open things up? Well, not really, because as far as the spectrum of light goes, that light is not visible to the human eye. So you can't really kind of do a visual inspection of that. Again, if you want to follow the letter of the law. So these holes have to be provided for an actual visual observance. Obviously, that might not be sufficient. There might be interferences. There might be blockages. The issues, you might see issues that are extending beyond your visual limit. So maybe you need to actually cut some slots. And again, using borescope camera, inspect those areas. Now, there's benefits to each of those. Obviously, drilling small holes is minimally invasive, perhaps, but in a case where we're lucky and there is no issues, in the 6 or 9 year inspection cycle that we have, obviously you're gonna have to close those holes up, make sure they're waterproofed and watertight, and then come back in 6 or 9 years and drill more holes. What's done a lot, and again, not just because of this ordinance, in a lot of cases where there is issues with these types of structures, when slots are cut, you can actually go back and provide vent covers and cover those areas up with vent covers. It does two things. In 6 or 9 years, you have to remove 4, 6, 8, whatever number of screws to gain access again. But it also provides ventilation, which is something that's very beneficial to the issues that actually cause some of the damage that we see out there. Upon taking care of the inspection, we provide the owner an inspection report. The inspection report will have stuff that Omid had talked about and are spelled out in the ordinances. But sometimes, depending on what we observe, all of that might not be enough, and we might have to actually really open stuff up. We might have to be very invasive with regards to our investigation. And at that point, again, people do it differently, but we can coordinate with a contractor, or we can coordinate the efforts. You can coordinate the efforts. It's all different with the contractor to come and open up areas that we would like them to open up to gain better visual access and form a better opinion. When that happens, obviously, we'll do a much more in-depth inspection. And typically we do those when we see signs of issues, right? So if we determine that these EEEs actually pose an immediate threat to the safety of the public, we can judge what that immediacy is, obviously. But I know we have 15 days to notify the owners, but there are cases where we'll just have to pick up the phone and, or just run over to the office and say, no, you have an issue here and you have to really roll your sleeves up and make sure it's taken care of as soon as possible. Ownership will have to, at that point, restrict access to those locations. So now if we're talking about some of those balconies that we had in that photo, the tenants have to be restricted from accessing them. But if it's an access way to your building, it really kind of kicks the wheels in motion, and you have to kind of figure out the next steps. And the next steps is, again, a report, but most importantly, retaining the services of a professional, a design professional, engineer, architect, to prepare signed and sealed repair documentation and details, and going through the permitting process that Omid was talking about with urgency and immediacy in mind. Now, you as the landlords and the property managers have evidence that you can try to look for. There are warning signs. I think we're all familiar with streaking or discoloration over stucco. When you see that, there is a good sign that there is more going on behind it. Water intrusion leaves marks quite often. You can look for cracks. You can look if there's exposed steel elements attached to wood. You can look for some rusting of those. If it's more exposed wood material, you can look for rot. Very susceptible are those buildings near or adjacent to bodies of water, the ocean. We see it time and time again on both coasts of the United States, in fact. So you have a sense of, quite often when we really get down to brass tacks, the owners and the managers have some feelings about their structures, but again, sometimes there are no warning signs, and I'm going to get to that in the next slide. So why does this matter? Why does this ordinance matter? Obviously, it came about through a unfortunate event. But this image is from a property in Marina del Rey, just nearby the airport. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, Omid, and Omid did the initial inspection for this. This was done last week. Now, obviously, we had looked at this through smaller holes, and we determined that more stuff had to be opened up. That was the next step that I was talking about previously. But take a look at the picture on the left, and imagine that that part wasn't opened up. It looks decent, right? It looks pretty good. But take a look at a picture directly on the opposite side of it. And so, yes, there could be foreshadowing of events, but there could also not be. And these things do happen. These things are out there. There is a ton of these that actually will require some work. And it's not something to take lightly. And now that it's kind of law, it's, you're forced into looking at these. But just with regards to life safety, with regards to your tenants, these things do happen. These decays do happen, and it's something that you should be absolutely mindful about. With that said, again, I try to refrain from making this a technical presentation. I want to kind of mostly talk about tangible things, but I will pass it back to Omid now.
Thank you, Ramtin John. So as you mentioned, it's very important you start your inspection today. Please don't wait until last minute. for a couple of different reasons. Demand will be increased, price will be increased, and also processing time. So it's better you protect your family and your tenants today rather than tomorrow. Make sure your building is going to be safe. Feel free to call us. We provide you free consultation and initial assessment. Just feel free to reach us by either email or just give us a call, and we will be glad to help you.
Great. Yes, I also
Pardon me?
need to connect you with Omid and his team on an inspection. So if you want to answer that poll question, that will get you all connected. And I think, Omid, you said something important in that the urgency of this. I know that the date seems very far out, but I mean, when I'm doing the math in my head, I just don't see how there's even enough engineers to go around to do all the inspections, because I mean, there's so many buildings in California that would need to be inspected, and there's only 2 years and there's only so many engineers out there that, I mean, I'm gonna wait and see what happens, but I'm thinking this is gonna be like kind of a tight timeline for people who didn't do this earlier on. So I'm really glad that you guys are talking about it now, because with only 2 years left, I think this is probably a good time to start it, is what it seems like.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. And then I also wanted to ask another poll question. I'm going to close this one out just so that we can get to know you guys a little bit better. I'd like to know which one of you on the call still owns or manages rental properties in Southern California specifically. And in the meantime, I'm going to start with some of the questions that we received. Daniel here has asked us, if we pull the permit ourselves, can we do the rebuild or repair as long as it's approved by the city?
So we do recommend you hire a contractor who is licensed and insured. We are just a structural engineering firm, but according to the law, it's better you hire someone with license and insurance. If you want to comply correctly by law, it's better you find someone.
Great. And also from Alan saying that he has an interior stairway beyond the building foundation, having one wood 4x4 post on one corner supported by a concrete pier. So I guess there's a lot of questions like this that are really specific, like my balcony looks exactly like this. Does this count? I don't know if you can see that, Ramtin, and you could maybe speak to it.
And I think they also followed up with a clarification saying the stairway is fully enclosed interior space, having stucco exterior, same as the building. And because of that clarification, I would say it shouldn't fall under this ordinance. But if it's something that you're concerned about, you should look at it.
Great. And Brenda asking about the holes in the cutting. I know that must be kind of scary for some landlords to hear. Are they repaired after the inspection?
Well, we do not perform any repair because, as I said, we are not a contractor. And Ramtin mentioned we just open up a slot to make sure we are gonna inspect all aspects inside of under the stucco. Sometimes we are install vents, depend on the owner's request. If we get approval from them, we are installing temporary vents for ventilation.
Great.
With that said, when you do contract a contractor to perform the work, whether to provide us access or later on, that's something that you can certainly require. And again, you don't want to, it is my opinion that if you have a series of small holes, you want to cover them up.
Yes. And Hang asking, for my condo, the HOA is responsible for the inspections. Since the inspection is not due until the end of 2024, what can an individual owner do if there are defects observed at the balcony?
They definitely can reach us and we can perform inspection for them only for their building. If the HOA board member decide we are going to over there and check all buildings, we can help them. But if there are one owner that he wants to protect themselves and want to start early and be proactive, we will be glad to help them for sure.
Great. And Valerie, also an HOA question, is asking if an HOA decides to hire an architect to save money, what kind of architect should they hire? What kind of qualifications should the architect have?
As long as they are being licensed, they are fine, and they need
And
to.
insured.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think do you think there are, I mean, obviously there are some that might be better than others at performing the job. So maybe one that has more experience, I would say, would probably be another good qualification beyond just the legal requirement. Okay, and Valerie also asking if EEEadvisor only serves Southern California or also would do anything in the San Francisco Bay. So that's one of the reasons why I put up the question about where you guys are located. From my understanding, Omid, right? It's you service just Southern California at this time.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, and Kelly asking, why wouldn't a structural pest inspector be able to satisfy the burden of an inspection?
Ramtin, do you want to answer this one?
Again, if Omid, if you go back to the slide, and perhaps I'm sharing, but you can share that the two ordinances have different requirements for who can provide these inspections. If they have the qualifications that the ordinance requires, then they technically can. And if that inspector can have an understanding of waterproofing and structural elements, and again, matches the criteria that is set forth in the law, then perhaps yes. I don't know the answer to that because I don't know the exact qualifications of the person we're speaking about.
Okay, and
we can certainly look into that for you, and Omid can get back to you on that perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be great. By the way, everyone, I'm going to send you all the recording tomorrow, and all these questions are going to be sent to Omid as well and Ramtin, so they can help you out if we don't get to your question right now. Michelle has an interesting one. She has a 4-unit property that includes 2 single-family homes, a duplex with one on top of the other. The duplex has wooden stairways, but it's just a duplex. So does SB 721 apply to my property?
I think I understand that this building has a 4 units, right? You said that duplex and each story has 2 units, right?
I think so. You know, it says a duplex with 1 unit on top of the other. So it's just one building with 2 units and then 2 single family houses all on the same land.
I see. So as long as the APN of the building is more than 3 dwelling unit, this is subject to the ordinances. I cannot clearly say about this building because we need to go there and check it out and make sure based on our requirement and criteria and tell you the accurate answer. But the most important thing is the APN of the building. If it's more than 3 dwelling unit, definitely we are subject to the ordinances.
Okay, so that one might be a gray area to look into. Okay, yeah, and David also asking, you know, I own a 2-unit building in San Francisco. Does that fall under this new law? So the answer would be no, right? It has to be 3 units. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
All right. And let's see here. Are we able to get a copy of the slides? Yes. You mentioned wood decks and balconies were under this new legislation, but later mentioned stucco exterior elevated elements. Can you please clarify on the requirements as far as materials?
Yeah, so the stucco would be the covering material. So the beyond the stucco is, you know, the actual structure, the meat of the triple E elements, which would be wood. And the ordinances, you know, if it's a wood or in whole or partially wood, they fall under the ordinances. The stucco is the finish, the covering material.
Got it. And Anne Marie is asking if the year of the building matters. She has a building that was built in 1985, 7 units in Pasadena. There's nothing in the law, right, that says that if your building's older or?
No, any buildings as long as they are more than three dwelling, as long as they have more than 3 dwelling units, they are subject to that. But for newly constructed building that they get certificate of occupancy after 2019, then owner required to comply by 6 years after getting this certificate. So I would say for this question, yes, for sure they are subject to the ordinance as long as they have more than 3 dwelling units.
Great, that makes sense. And Beth is asking, is a cleared inspection report recorded with the state to show compliance? So do you report that to the state once you do the inspection?
So we do not notify the local city because each city has their own policy and requirement. As an inspector, we're required by law to notify city if the owner not complying correctly and finish the repair. As we mentioned in previous slides, if after 180 days under SB721 owner not finishing construction, we're required to notify local city. And for immediate threat repair, we're required to notify local city within 30 days after completion of inspection.
Now, Omid, if the building is to turn hands, meaning there's a sale or acquisition of a building, are these reports required to be handed over?
Yes, for sure. If the owner.
So I think that's an important caveat.
Yes, yes. They require to keep this report for 2 years, for 2 cycling period, my bad. It means that 12 years for SB721 and 18 years for SB326. And if they decide to sell property, the new owner should have that.
So you have to keep the inspection reports for a lot of years. That's wow. Okay, so keep your inspection reports once they're done. You might need them later. Also, just Brian reiterating a question about concrete Pandex and stairways made entirely of steel and concrete. So in that case, would an inspection be required?
It shouldn't fall under the ordinances. Again, they're pretty specific about the material. But again, I always say with regards to anything that's on the exterior building and provides access or human use, if you see signs of issues, it behooves you to take a look at it. But as far as the specificity of these two ordinances, no.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it might not be a bad idea if it's older to take a look at it anyway, even if the law doesn't require it. Monet is asking that it's an HOA. They've done the pre-inspection. They found 1 unit with a life-threatening balcony. They're being told that the repairs have to have permits from the city, but that's not stated in SB326. So can the city require permits to make those changes?
We have always recommended our client to go for permit because it's going to be documented, and later if something gonna wrong happen, you have enough document with city, you obtain permit already from them, you communicate, you notify them, so they are aware what's going on in your building, and later you would have a less headache. It's correct, maybe the law didn't define it correctly, but we recommend to go with your city, obtain permit, make sure to notify them, and finish the construction, because as you mentioned, this is an immediate threat for the occupant.
Yeah, and a lot of jurisdictions do provide kind of an expedited format for things that have to do with immediate life safety. So if you're worried about a certain duration of the permitting process, talk to them about the immediacy of your needs.
Yeah, I would think they'd want you to fix that if it's life-threatening,
ASAP.
right? So they're going to make it a little easier for you. I hope so. So another interesting question from Thomas. I have an apartment building with 24 units. However, each unit has an APN number. The building is rented as a rental building. Is that considered a condo or rental unit under SB 721 and 326?
Good question.
I would say for this type of project, we typically consider as a one unit project, and we provide you report. We are going to provide it under one report. If required to obtain any permit, we submit it under one plan. We are not going to send a separate plan for each APN. We are going with one APN. We want to make it easy for everyone and avoid back and forth, because it's create more delay in process of approval in the city. It's better we just go with the one APN and we create a drawing for each balcony separately in the plan, in the drawing plan.
Got it. Also, what happens if we do not have our buildings inspected by December 2024? I think you mentioned a daily fine, right?
Yes. And also liability risk. That's the most important thing.
Oh yeah, that could be huge. I mean, if you're at fault, even your insurance company won't cover you, if you didn't do what you needed to do. Did you say the fine was, I think I heard you say $500 a day?
Yes,
if you don't.
100 to 500 per local city per local city code. I'm not sure exactly, but it should be between 100 to 500.
Whatever it is, you don't want to pay it. So, okay, so we have Paul. Paul, I saw you requesting me to see your question. I looked and I see it. My balcony is built over the garage of my neighbor's condo. Is this considered an exterior elevated element? It is supported by the structure of the building, and the building has 3 units.
So the balcony, I'm reading it also. Paul
Yeah.
Jennings, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. My balcony is built over the garage of my neighbor's condo. Is this gonna? If that balcony is beyond the exterior limits of your walls, and you have 3 units, I would say yes. Unfortunately, if I had a picture of it, I could probably opine in a better fashion. But it feels like yes.
Yeah, I think so too, based on what you've said so far. Maybe some pictures might make things a little easier. So I think here was another question from Stasia. Do these only apply to residential buildings or commercial as well?
I don't remember exactly that question. What was?
Yeah, is it for just residential buildings or commercial buildings too, like businesses?
No, residential.
Only residential. Okay, that's good to know. All right. And let's see, Paula, I have a carport, wood beam, and post construction with a deck on top. The ordinance applies, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
There you go, Paula. What would you recommend for finding a pest control specialist for wood beetle infestation and fungal infection of wood support members?
Where is this so I can actually read it?
This one was sent in at 11:46 a.m. I know there's so many, by Jerry Wong, asking a recommendation for a pest control specialist for wood beetle infestation.
Obviously credentials, and we live in a world of online reviews. You certainly want to read as many as you can. I don't know how, I cannot provide any referrals. I don't know exactly where you're located anyway. But certainly if somebody's not doing their job right these days, you'll see it online. I'm sorry for the lack of kind of a good answer here, but I don't know what else to tell you. Thoroughness, when they're out there, you want the people to spend time at your property, right? So thoroughness is one thing to look for. And then also availability and being able to walk through with you through the problem. And again, this was with regard to the pest issue. These are things that I would look for, but again, it's not a technical comment on my part. It's more of a personal opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Ed is asking, we have our fire escapes inspected annually. Are these inspections considered part of SB721? And would this inspection comply with the required inspections, the fire escapes?
So as far as I know, no, these are 2 separate ordinances, especially for people who live in Northern California. They have separate ordinances in San Francisco. So I'm not sure where exactly your building located at, but these are 2 separate ordinances and you need to comply by them separately.
Great. Okay. Yeah, Northern California has their own set of requirements. So also
It doesn't
from,
mean that the inspections can't be combined, right?
that'd be nice, more
So
convenient.
whoever is doing those work, perhaps they can also provide the requirements of the ordinances as well. You know,
As
Good
long as
idea.
they have certification. If you're inspecting gonna be engineer and they are able to write down and stamp and sign it for you, you can do that.
Great. And Raymond is asking if the rest of the presentation is Q&A. Yes, it is. I know we are at the 1 hour mark now. So anyone who wants to stay can, of course. We're going to keep going with questions. Omid and Ramtin, are you okay with that?
of course. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we got lots of questions. They keep coming in. From Anne, if I have a deck sitting on top of a garage made of concrete walls and ceiling, does this apply?
Deck sitting on top of a garage. Does your deck extend beyond your garage?
Mm.
In
We'll wait
essence,
for
is
her
it
to
just a roof,
respond.
like a roof deck? Because is my screen still being shared? Yes.
Somebody's is. I'm not sure if this
Yeah,
is
it's mine. Let me go back. Let me
okay.
go back to an image. I apologize. All right, let's put this up because there's a couple of questions about this. Look at the roof deck, the two roof deck areas, and if you see, I don't know if you do see my cursor or not, but I can kind of use a highlighter. Is that visible?
I can see it. It's a little tiny though.
Okay. Anyway, so there's two roof deck areas that don't extend beyond the extent of the building, right? And they're not considered. Now, you also mentioned materials that do not actually fall under the requirements. So my without proper due diligence, but just to answer your question today, I would say probably no.
Yeah. And Brenda was asking similar. She was saying, many roof decks have great views, patio furniture, tenants use them. Why are those not covered under the legislation?
You'll
You'll have to ask the legislators, I guess.
That's right.
Right? That's what they said. I agree. That does seem kind of odd. I would think since they are used,
Yeah. Again, and I've highlighted this. The language on the right side of the screen is again directly taken from 721, I believe, and it extends beyond exterior walls of the building. That's how they define it.
Okay. Also here, let's see. Roger, if you have a 20-unit HOA stucco building, the balconies are coming off the main joists. It's supported by the main walls on each side as well. Do all units have to be inspected? It is a wooden or synthetic deck material.
Yes. So if it's 20 units and it's an HOA, it falls under SB326. And to reach that 95% confidence level, it's just a statistical exercise. You have to inspect 19 of those.
Okay, Akshay asking, are all structural engineers qualified to do this inspection and certify, or is there any special training required?
If they are licensed civil or structural engineers, as far as the law is concerned, they're qualified to do it.
Okay, and
obviously they have to be able to sign and seal in the state that they're providing the work, in this case California.
Okay. There are three similar questions where people have multiple units, but they're separated. They're not connected or attached. So they have at least 3 units, but they're not separated or attached. They're on the same parcel of land. So do the units need to be attached to fall under this?
Is it a rental? What kind of property is this?
It's considered,
condominium, or is this?
They didn't say. So this one came from Gary early on in the presentation at the top. It should be the first one. It says 3-unit multifamily properties, but the 3 units are completely separated. They're not connected or attached on the same parcel.
again, Omid, I think you kind of answered this before.
Mhm.
If as far as the if they're considered one property that has 3 units, whether they're attached or not, I don't think it matters. But again, you would have to kind of go look at through the paperwork of your property and perhaps have Omid review it as well.
Yeah, we can provide a free consultation as we have always promised. So feel free to reach us and we will provide it to you. Any other information you feel that's going to be useful for you.
Okay, great. There's also, let's see, there was another question here that I'm looking for. Oh, yes. Nathaniel, would this be part of a standard building inspection on a 5-unit or more for sale?
As far as I know, if you want to sell your property, some insurances require you to have, and they ask you to provide them their report. So if you want to make sure your sales transaction will be completed correctly, we recommend you start your inspection.
But it's not part of your in a sense home inspector, right? Your home inspection. This is beyond your home inspection.
Right, right.
Mm. Okay. Roger says he had a contractor tell me that an actual engineer didn't need to inspect these balconies and he could inspect them and do the repairs if needed. Is that true?
As long as it's fall under SB721 and the home inspector has license, yes, they can.
Great. Do you have any suggestions to what to upgrade the balcony surface material with?
Ramtin?
Yeah, that's right up your alley. What would you do, ideally?
Again, you have to be practical, right? And one of the issues with these types of laws is it creates kind of a mayhem for the property owners. So it's always an exercise of what to do, how much to do, what's the practical limit. As in my opinion, as long as the surfaces, as long as the waterproofing elements are done correctly, the materials, obviously, you want to look at I don't want to specify in particular material, and that's why I'm dancing around the topic. But to me, what's more important is the warranty of the material that you use, but also the installation and the detailing of the waterproofing elements to make sure whatever you do is protected. Synthetic materials are good, but synthetic materials also have their own issues, right? So it's not that. And again, if we look at your building, or if Omid looks at your building, he can send it to me and I can provide some further information. What you can do is turn it from a wood balcony to something else, but so you don't have to worry about the ordinance, but that's not a practical way of doing this.
We're kind of stuck with it, I guess.
In
laws
essence,
we've been given.
and that's what I think. You kind of you have what you have. So how do we first we check what you have to make sure it's in good condition, and if it's not, we prevent the causes from creating this issue again. And again, a lot of times, to me, that's preventing. Is a preventive measure that has a lot to do with the waterproofing, etc. Using the right wood materials, perhaps even using, if it's an open type structure, pressure treated material for the wood. There is times where we've seen that the exterior elements are built out of just regular wood, and of course, give it a few years and it turns really bad. If that's covered and moisture is still penetrating through, it's still going to be bad. You just can't see it. So again, I like to answer that question on a case-by-case basis.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. I think maybe we'll just wrap it up with one more question. I know we have still a few more, but they are all very specific case. I have this, I have that. Does it qualify? So maybe those are best answered offline because we've gone over quite a few of those. But Sean is asking, he says that he's in San Diego. He just about 3 months ago had a new deck installed on his 7-unit building, by a licensed and insured general contractor. Can he provide me a report to cover me for 6 years or whenever the inspection is due again?
It is my opinion that if that person feels comfortable doing that, not knowing what has happened in these 7 months, perhaps, if he has, especially if he has photo documentation of when the work was being installed, correct? Because then there is that visual access. And again, it's like Omid said, 721, a licensed contractor can perform this work. So you just have to be careful about who is doing this for you. A bit of a gray area, but again, I like to be practical about things. So perhaps, but they have to be comfortable enough doing this.
Okay, great. Well, I think that was a great question to end with. And although there are more, I will send them over to you guys. And of course, the recording is available to you all tomorrow. I'm going to send it by email by the end of the day. Check your spam folder. Sometimes it goes there, or you can reach out to me and I can, get it to you directly. And thank you so much, Omid and Ramtin. I sincerely appreciate all of the time that you've given us today and the information. I got some thank yous in the Q&A, and so people seem to have learned quite a bit about this, and so it's better to be prepared, and you guys have helped us do that today. So I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have you back soon or have you write an article for us and with any updates that we might need. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Alexander.
Our pleasure.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.